The rain came down in relentless sheets over a quiet Virginia town, turning the streets into glistening rivers of reflected light from dim street lamps, and out on the edge of that town, hidden behind an industrial block no one paid much attention, too stood an aging brick building with rusting chain-link fences rattling in the wind, the county animal shelter. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of disinfectant and the faint whimpering of animals whose lives were now measured not in years or months, but in days and hours. And in kennel number 14 lay a German shepherd named Rex, once a symbol of strength, discipline, and loyalty, now curled into himself on a thin, frayed blanket, staring at the concrete floor as if it might offer a way out. Rex had been no ordinary dog. He was a decorated military canine, trained for bomb detection and protection, a soldier on 4 legs who had served multiple tours in Afghanistan, sniffing out explosives, guarding perimeters, and, more than once, saving soldiers from walking into traps that would have ended in certain death. But war leaves its mark on all who serve, and Rex's last mission had ended with an IED blast that left him with a limp, some hearing loss in one ear, and a growing distrust of strangers. When his service ended, there was no retirement ceremony, no medals, no warm home waiting, just a file stamped in cold, unforgiving ink. Too aggressive for adoption. The handlers who had once depended on him were reassigned. The military moved on, and Rex found himself shuffled into the civilian shelter system where big, aging, injured dogs almost never find homes. Volunteers avoided him, some out of fear, others because they couldn't bear to see the haunted look in his eyes. And so, after months of sitting in that kennel with no visitors, the shelter staff scheduled what they called the appointment, a clean, clinical term for ending his life. His countdown was now less than 24 hours. Outside, the wind howled, and the world went about its business, unaware that one of its quiet heroes was about to be erased without a trace. But then, just before closing time, the shelter's old glass door swung open, letting in a gust of icy air and the steady, deliberate tap of a cane on the worn tile floor. The man who stepped in was tall, with squared shoulders under a faded Marine Corps jacket, his hair peppered with gray, his face marked by deep lines that spoke of both hardship and resilience. Luke Reynolds, a retired Marine who had lost his sight 12 years earlier in a roadside bombing in Helmand Province. He walked alone, guided not by sight but by an unshakable sense of purpose, the kind only someone who's carried both the weight of war and the emptiness of its aftermath can understand. The receptionist looked up, startled as Luke approached, water dripping from the hem of his coat. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked. His reply was steady, unhesitating. "I'm here for the dog." She frowned, confused. There were dozens of dogs in the shelter, and began to explain that adoptions were closed for the night. "Not just any dog," Luke interrupted softly. "I read about him. The retired military K9, the one no one will take." A shadow of recognition crossed her face, followed by hesitation. "Sir, you don't understand. This dog is unpredictable. He's been labeled dangerous. "I know what he is," Luke said, his voice low but carrying the weight of conviction. "And I know what it's like to be thrown away. When you're no longer useful." Those words landed like a stone in the stillness of the room, silencing whatever protest she had been about to make. With a resigned sigh, she led him down the narrow hallway toward Kennel 14, the sound of the rain outside fading under the growing chorus of barks and whines from the dogs inside. When they stopped, Luke reached forward, his hand brushing the cold metal bars. Inside, Rex lay motionless, his eyes flicking up at the sound of the cane tapping against the floor. There was no growl, no bark, just the slow lift of his head, his ears twitching toward the man kneeling now in front of his cage. Luke extended his hand through the bars, palm open, steady, and after a long moment, Rex shifted forward, sniffing cautiously before pressing his cold nose into the Marine's calloused hand. Something passed between them then, something unspoken, forged in the shared understanding of what it means to be trained to serve, to fight, to protect, and then to be discarded when broken. "Yeah," Luke murmured, almost to himself. "You're coming home, soldier." Minutes later, papers were signed, chains were unhooked, and Rex stepped out into the cold night beside the man who couldn't see him but could feel every ounce of his presence. The first days were awkward. Luke tripped over furniture as Rex followed too close. Rex startled at sudden noises and flinched when strangers approached. But slowly, through repetition and patience, they began to sink. Luke spoke to Rex in the same firm, steady tone he had once used with fellow Marines, and Rex began to respond, guiding Luke around curbs and obstacles with a precision that seemed to wake some long-dormant pride in him. In return, Luke's world, once so small and closed in, began to open again. Not through sight, but through the trust building between them. Weeks turned into months, and then one bright spring afternoon in Richmond, they were walking down a crowded sidewalk when the roar of an engine split the air. A car, swerving wildly, jumped the curb, hurtling toward a young mother and her child frozen in shock. In the heartbeat that followed, Rex lunged, slamming into them with enough force to knock them clear, taking the hit himself. Luke heard the impact, the scream of metal and tires, and dropped to his knees, his hands finding Rex's head. "Stay with me, soldier," he whispered fiercely, as chaos erupted around them. At the vet hospital, hours crawled by, but Rex pulled through, his resilience as unyielding as it had been in combat. The story made headlines. Blind Marine and retired K-9 save family in split-second heroism. And donations poured in, enough to launch a new program pairing retired military dogs with veterans who needed them. In interviews, Luke always brushed off praise, saying the same thing. "I didn't save him that day at the shelter. He's been saving me every day since." And when people asked why he chose the dog everyone else had written off, he would smile faintly and say, "Because no soldier should be left behind." Their story became a beacon for others, a reminder that sometimes the most broken souls are the ones who can save you if only someone is willing to give them a chance. Call to action. Heroes don't always wear uniforms, and sometimes they walk on 4 legs. If this story touched your heart, share it right now, because somewhere out there, another soldier is waiting for their second chance, and you might be the one to give it to them.